Sie alle kennen wahrscheinlich den alten Spruch von Alain Chapelle, dem großen französischen Neoklassiker. La cuisine, c'est beaucoup plus que des recettes. Chapelle hat das sicherlich anders gemeint, als ich das hier meine, aber man kann es anders aussehen. Wir machen Erfahrungen multimedialer Art in alle Richtungen. Jeder noch so simple Dorfgastronom inszeniert ein großes Brimborium, meistens nicht absichtlich. Das Auge ist mit, ja, aber auch die anderen Sinne. Und wir machen ästhetische Erfahrungen, die weit über das hinausgehen, was das Wahrnehmen von Licht oder Geräuschen angeht. Manchmal sind sie nur oberflächlich, manchmal sind sie gravierend für das Befinden des Gastes. Und ich finde, dieses Thema, das wird sich zeigen, glaube ich, in meinen Worten, ist wesentlich komplexer, als es im Moment aussieht. Und es ist auch möglicherweise komplexer als das, was heute schon gemacht wird. Und es geht möglicherweise auch noch in eine Richtung, an die im Moment noch kaum jemand denkt. Sehen wir uns dann mal ein paar grundlegende Wahrnehmungen an, wenn wir am Restaurant sind. Wir kommen hinein, haben den Geruch des Raumes, wir haben den Geruch der Gäste, das Parfüm von Damen, die sich oder Herren, die sich kurz bevor sie das Restaurant betreten haben, parfümiert haben. Ich sitze manchmal neben Leuten, wo ich sage, ich muss einen Tisch weiter, ich kann hier nicht arbeiten. Nicht bei dem Geruch. Und schmeckt alles nachher mit den retronasalen Akkord von Kölnisch Wasser. Das Raumklima klingt banal, aber wenn Sommeliers bei Ihnen sind, dann werden Sie wissen, dass es ein Unterschied ist, ob Sie einen Wein mit 18 Grad bei 20 Grad Raumtemperatur servieren oder bei 27 Grad Raumtemperatur, eine Temperatur, die häufig erreicht wird. Der Wein schmeckt komplett anders. Die Akustik. Manchmal hört man jedes Wort, weil es nach Gourmet-Tempel aussieht, nicht sehr voll ist, an einem Wochentagabend vielleicht. Und dann die Musik, dann das Ambiente wird oft unterschätzt. Ich komme gleich zu Details. Dann die soziale und psychische Situation. Das kann schon beginnen, je nachdem, wie der Gast begrüßt wird. Der Service, die anderen Gäste. Er kann sich schlecht fühlen oder gut fühlen, bevor er noch den ersten Bissen zu sich genommen hat. Stellen Sie sich vor, wir sind in einem Restaurant, wie es das mittlerweile gibt, kommen wir gleich zu. Ein Restaurant, wo wir sitzen und rundum sind Projektionen, die sich ändern. In diesem Beispiel wird Ihnen sofort klar machen, wo es drum geht eigentlich oder gehen kann. Das Menü ist synchronisiert, so alle kriegen das Gleiche. Es kommt ein Lammgang und es sind wunderschöne Bilder da von Bergwiesen mit frischen Kräutern, Mutterschafe, Lämmer. Die Leute sind mitten im Essen, da kommt ein Umschnitt auf Schlachthausszenen mit entsprechendem Geräusch. Denn darum geht es beim Essen. Können wir, oder ist das die Stelle, die wir gedanklich lösen müssen oder an der wir ansetzen müssen, um wirklich da reinzukommen? Es sind nicht die Bilder, die das Problem sind. Es ist das, was wir davon im Kopf haben. Und wie wir darauf reagieren. Und dass wir mit einem solchen Beispiel, mit einer Schlachthausszene, mit Krach und Blut, man könnte auch noch den Geruch des Blutes vielleicht im Raum verteilen, dass wir dort an eine Stelle kommen, wo auf einmal unser gesamter emotionaler Hintergrund uns so ins Handwerk pfuscht, dass wir innerlich zusammenbrechen. Wie würden die Leute reagieren? Niemand wird es ausprobieren. Das sage ich Ihnen schon jetzt. Ich würde es auch nicht ausprobieren wollen. Es reicht, sich das vorzustellen. Wenn Sie sich angeregt unterhalten, schmecken Sie nicht mehr. Sie schmecken nichts. Das ist mir selber schon passiert. An der Präsentation eines Buches in einem Restaurant. Ich wusste hinterher nicht, was ich gegessen habe. Das heißt, müssen wir darüber nachdenken, über Beleuchtung, Musik und was auch immer? Oder ist das insgesamt kontraproduktiv? Ich weiß schon, was das Thema heute ist. Ich stelle nur diese Frage. Sie ist für meine Begriffe nicht gelöst. Oder ist das kontraproduktiv, weil es ablenkt? Weil es irgendeinen Zirkus veranstaltet? Es ist vielleicht das Beste, was man machen könnte. Provokante Frage. Das Beste, was man machen könnte, hinzugehen und zu sagen, das Restaurant muss optisch irgendwie neutral sein. Das darf auch nicht reiche rustikal haben, wie eine Schwarzwaldstube, eine Traube-Turmbach bei Wohlfahrt, weil dann gibt es Leute, die finden das zum Kotzen. Essen hin, Essen her. Muss das Restaurant vielleicht schwarz und weiß sein? Wenig Schmuck, wenig Ablenkung, gar nichts. Muss alles ausgehalten werden, was wir die ganze Bohren, ist das vielleicht zu viel? Und das ist nicht vielleicht, findet nicht das eigentliche Klima auf dem Teller statt. Wenn das Gehirn tatsächlich so gebaut ist, dass wenn wir schmecken, wenn wir rumreden, also Löhne und Thema, dann wird das Gang serviert, der Gang serviert, zwischen den Gängen reden noch Leute weiter am Thema, man ist selber noch beteiligt an den Gesprächen, dann wissen Sie nicht mehr, was Sie schmecken. Ist das komplett kontraproduktiv, irgendwas dazu zu packen? Wenn wir also den assoziativen Kontext beim Essen hochziehen und wirklich, das kann von ganz harmlosen Sachen ausgehen. Man kann in moderne Gerichte traditionelle Zitate einbauen, wie das manche Köche in den Niederlanden und in Skandinavien eigentlich sehr gut machen. Die kochen avantgardistisch, aber sie finden immer traditionelle Elemente im Essen. Da klingt der Esser ein, selbstverständlich. Er findet sich wieder, er findet seinen assoziativen Kontext wieder, er kann das identifizieren. Dann sieht er ein interessantes Spiel zwischen dem, was so passiert, mit den modernen Sachen. Und da hinein können wir alles einbauen, nah am Teller. Wir können die Musik einbeziehen, wir können Geruch, wir können alles Mögliche machen. Vor allem können wir auch diese psychischen Aspekte einbeziehen, indem wir diesen assoziativen Kontext im Teller installieren. Wir können ein Psychoessen gestalten. Sie können Menüs gestalten, die von vorne bis hin nicht nur kulinarische Überraschungen bringen, Degustationen, wie das schon mal häufiger in den letzten Jahren der Fall war, sondern wo diese emotionale Verknüpfung da ist. Und dann haben Sie eine neue Küche. Und das kann bisher leider noch so gut wie niemand.
Was macht denn, wir haben einige Beispiele gehört, aber was macht für Sie ganz persönlich ein Restaurantbesuch, wenn Sie mal in der freien Zeit in einem Restaurant sein sollten, zu einem Erlebnis?
Nur das Essen. Das ist das Ding, diese kritische Frage, die ich gegen allzu viel Euphorie in diese multimediale Richtung stelle. Kann es nicht sein, dass, wenn das Essen wirklich komplett faszinierend ist, dass das kaum eine Rolle spielt? Das aber sehr wohl dann eine Rolle spielt, was sich von dieser Idee des multimedialen, multisensorialen am Teller direkt abspielt. Wenn Leute bei Rezepi zum Beispiel ich war einmal da habe ich ein Menü bekommen mit zum Beispiel folgenden Elementen, den lebenden Garnelen. Ja, das ist so ein Gebilde, da steht dann ein Glas drauf umgekehrt, da sind lebende Garnelen drin, sie sollen sie auch lebend essen. Auch so ein grenzwertiges Ding. Habe ich gemacht, es ist kulinarisch absolut sinnvoll, weil natürlich lebenfrische Garnelen, vor allem im Kopf, ein wundervolles Aroma haben. Das ist nicht das Thema. Die Rezeption von diesem Gericht in deutschen Gourmet-Zeitschriften war bizarr. Das lief so mehr oder weniger in Richtung Perversion. Also kulinarisch sinnvoll, aber Perversion. Wenn man sich das genauer anguckt, das ist eine ganz traditionelle Sache. Als ich das erste Mal da gegessen hatte, bekam ich wenig später ein Buch von Patrick Chefroy, einem 2-Sterne-Koch in der Bretagne, in die Hand, der wundervoll begeistert darüber berichtete, wie er als kleiner Junge am Strand entlang gesessen und die Garnelen so. Typisch für heute, dumme Leute wissen nicht, was ist. Oder sie bekommen als einziges Teil einen Fischkopf. Oder die Sache mit den fermentierten Ameisen. Auch als Perversion gescholten. Ich habe einen anderen Hintergrund aufgebaut, das ist auch der, den Rezipier hat. Das Ausweiten des Essens in Bereiche, in Produkte, die wir bisher nicht so richtig verwenden, ist absolut interessant. Er sagt, er braucht kein Essig mehr, er braucht kein Balsamico, weil mit seinen fermentierten heimischen Ameisen eine wunderbare Würze. Mir wirft das immer vor, dass ich zu kognitiv auf das Essen zugehen würde und mit den ganzen Analysen so. Es ist genau umgekehrt. Das ist totaler Quatsch. Die Oberflächlichkeit liegt bei den Leuten, die nur emotional darauf reagieren. Je weiter sie auf das Essen zugehen, ist meine Erfahrung, desto klarer wird es, dass es ein sagenhaft komplexer und offener Apparat. Ich nenne immer dieses Beispiel für die klassische und die Avantgarde-Küche. Die klassische Küche war so eine Pyramide. Klassisch französische Küche. Jeder wusste, auch von der Wahrnehmung her, vom Kochen her, wie es da an der Spitze aussah, was man machen muss, um da hinzukommen. Das war eigentlich relativ klar. Auch was gut und schlecht war klar. Die Avantgarde ist auch wieder eine Pyramide. Die steht aber mit der Spitze drauf, auf der alten, und ist nach oben offen. Und das gilt für die Wahrnehmung, die wir alle haben. Komplett. Wir sind hier, deswegen finde ich das auch so sehr gut, dieses Thema hier. Es ist sehr, sehr früh damit anzufangen, weil man feststellen wird, es ist genau dieses Thema wieder. Es geht in alle Richtungen und man kriegt es auch mit Sicherheit in keiner Weise irgendwie auch nur ansatzweise unter Kontrolle. Aber es ist oft sehr wichtig zu wissen, in welche Richtung etwas gehen kann. Das ist auch eine gute Information. Es ist keine schlechte Information zu sagen, es könnte da interessant werden. Lass es uns machen. Lass es uns versuchen, was da passiert.
Was wir heute sehr eindrücklich gesehen haben, auch durch das ganze Panel an Referenten, ist, dass das ein sehr breites Feld ist, dass man das aus verschiedensten Aspekten anschauen kann. Wissenschaft, das ist die Naturwissenschaft. Wissenschaft sind aber auch Kulturwissenschaften. Und ich glaube, da gibt es wahnsinnig viel Potenzial und es ist wahnsinnig spannend von diesen Projekten, diesen Spitzenprojekten, also so im Sinne von Bergspitzen, die aus dem See herausschauen, wo sich Wissenschaftler oder Leute, die sonst bei der Oper arbeiten, mit Gastronomen zusammengetan haben und versuchen, aus diesen zwei Welten eine Fusion zu machen. Finde ich wahnsinnig spannend.
So here we have something that looks like a beautiful dish that's been prepared at the chef's hand. And within a blink of an eye, when you see that on the screen or on the plate, your mind is expecting, making predictions about what it would taste like. What is the flavour? Do you enjoy it? Is it good for you? How many calories? All those thoughts, consciously or otherwise, go through your mind within less than a blink of an eye when you see that food. The problem is that when you see that, you set the expectations of a sweet berry ice cream, raspberry, strawberry, something like that. When you put a mouthful of that in, you'll have a response much like the Japanese participants in the previous slide. It's not what I expected, it's salty. This might be a frozen smoked salmon ice cream. So the colour is appropriate to the taste, it's just not what you expected. And this, when people like, Heston serve this food, and they say, well, it was seasoned perfectly for me, and I'm one of the world's top chefs, and I give it out at the front of the house, and people go, ugh, it's too salty. And they don't eat it then, and they don't eat it several weeks later. It's the kind of point of realization, no matter how brilliantly, perfectly I season the food, I need to know what is going on in the mind of my diner. I need to know what expectations they have about what they're going to eat. And it's only by the marriage of the great culinary technique with some insight into the mind of the diner that you can hope to deliver the truly great and memorable food experiences. And now I think for the next few decades we're going to see the new gastrophysics, some would call it, the new science of the diner, the science of the front of house, the science of setting, managing expectations in the mind of the diner. I think this will go forward as chefs like Heston and Ferran come to science labs to find out the latest on how the mind works, and then take some of those insights back into the kitchen to try and design dishes in different ways. And while traditionally, you know, the chef would always think it is just about sourcing the right ingredients, local, fresh, preparing them, combining them in the right way on the plate. Increasingly, there's a whole generation of young chefs, I think, who for the first time, as far as I'm aware, are thinking about what goes on here. The chefs who have been at places like the Fat Duck for a day, a week, a month, or a year, are now popping up, starting up elsewhere, and they're thinking, I need to know about this. And this is a very exciting time, both because the chefs are interested, and they also because they have the creativity to turn some of the science into delicious, memorable, on occasion life-changing dishes. A second strand of the research comes from online experimentation. Sometimes with chefs we've never even met. We just see a dish like this, the signature dish from Albert Landgraf in Sao Paulo's Apis restaurant, one of the up-and-coming chefs in South America. And it's visually stunning, 3 onions with tapioca, vinegar, spume and stuff. Visually stunning on the eye, and all those onions point away from the diner. This is his signature dish, and this is how intuitively the chef has plated that thing. Is the chef right? Is the chef always right in their intuitions about what looks good to the diner? Well, what we can do is take a picture of Albert's dish, put it on the internet, and allow people around the world, or in particular countries, to spin that plate on their mobile devices, on their computers at home. And here's the results. We get 300 people here, 3,000 people looking at Albert's dish, spinning that dish on their devices at home, saying, how would you like that dish to be plated? The more the dots, each dot is a person or a group of people, because see, most people do care how that dish is plated, and if you average all of these people, potential diners, you find that they like this dish about 3.9 degrees past 12 o'clock. So the chef intuitively says 12, and the answer is 12:01. Close enough not to matter in this case. But there are other cases where chefs now take their dish that they're thinking about putting on the restaurant menu, upload it one night, and by the next morning you might have 2, 3, 4, 500 potential diners saying how they'd like the things oriented, arranged, aligned, and so on. Very powerful new technique, internet-based testing that's very cheap and that's very rapid. So we are doing dinners in Oxford with a business school where the chefs will come in, think about what to plate for the next day's dinner. We upload it the night before, and the way it is served to the restaurant guests is changed as a result of this. And of course, it's not just the visual presentation of the stuff on the plate, if a plate there is. That plateware can also change our experience in ways that, again, don't make sense, but are reproducible here in the Alicia Foundation, just outside Barcelona, where we first did the study with what really is a strawberry ice cream this time. You can believe your eyes. Served in an environment very similar to this. Half of the people eating that dessert from a round white plate, half from a black plate. And you asked, how sweet is that dessert from 1 to 9? How intense the flavour of the strawberry? How much do you like that ice cream? And the results are that this ice cream on the right is rated as tasting 10% sweeter and 15% stronger flavour than exactly the same batch, served in exactly the same room, on exactly the same day, but from a black plate instead. Is it always a 10%, 15% change? Not always, but we have repeated this experiment in the Paul Bocuse Cookery School and Restaurant in Lyon. We've repeated it in hotel restaurants in Scotland. Others have repeated it in Greenland. White plates seem to be sweeter than black. Round plates are sweeter than angular ones. And so the colour of the plate can deliver sweetness in a way that doesn't make sense, but is reproducible. And just imagine you're a food producer sending out tens or hundreds of thousands of plastic trays of food a day in the supermarket. You've never thought about the colour of the plastic in which that food comes. Yet it can deliver sweetness, enhance perception of saltiness. It's something you'd want to know about and incorporate into your design. And now we have the earbuds in ear. We have the iPod in the shell. And for me, it's been on the signature dish since 2008. It's still there to this day. I guess they're still serving it in Melbourne while the Fat Duck is away on tour. It works, it changes the taste of the seafood. It works because diners come away saying, I never thought about sound. But yes, every time the food tastes so good on the seaside, part of the reason is the sound of the seagull, the smell of the salty air. And here we've captured that experience in the outskirts of Slough, about as far from the seaside in the UK as you can ever go. Beautifully designed. And what happens is diners, they're busy, they're talking, they're chatting, they are excited. The headphones come along, they go in, and people are silent. It's like suddenly they're concentrating on the food. They do not talk, they just concentrate on the food for a dish. It's kind of mindful eating, and that is part of why the food tastes better. Would this work? Headphones every course? No. But for one course, the focus of diner's mind on the dish, I think it works. And for those diners who have come away from this dish in tears, it is more than just an obvious seafood sight sounds. It is more than that. It is an emotional experience. It's transformative in its way. So this is sort of technology at table that starts with the Fat Duck. We want to make it sort of mass market somehow. And we want to avoid this. All those diners out there with their mobile devices, sharing the pictures of the food with their friends, distracted from the meal. Rearranging the plates to get the perfect picture so that the food is cold by the time that you come to eat it. In the UK, Heston Blumenthal has a strict photography policy at his dinner restaurant now, and there are other chefs who now ban the taking of photographs. Come here to eat, to enjoy my cuisine as I intended it to be done, when it was served from the kitchen. Other than thinking how to play this game, but you want to take that technology, which is brilliant, some of the most amazing technology that's sitting in most of our pockets. But how can you take that technology, which has always been separate from the food, distracting from the food, and integrate it into the experience? And this was the idea behind this, that maybe answers one of the questions that I think was asked in the last talk. How do you go beyond the sound of the sea? Because in hindsight, that is so obvious now. It wasn't at the time, but now it is. Well, this is a sensory tasting menu from the House of Wolf, a now defunct restaurant in North London, Islington. One course for each sense, one course without your hands, one course blindfolded, one sound course. A sonic cake pop. You'll see here on the menu, take your phone, and if you want to make your dessert sweeter, dial 0845 680 2490. If you want to make your dessert more bitter, because I don't know whether you're a sweet tooth or not, bitter or sweet? Bitter. Obviously bitter. What about this? This is the other sound they could hear. Sweet. Obviously sweet. We've played these sounds around the world on the internet to hundreds to thousands of people, and there's no right or wrong answer because sweet and bitter do not have a sound. And yet the majority of people, in a synesthesia-like way, will say, yes, that feels bitter to me. That feels sweeter. Why? I don't know, it just does. And when you play those sounds, the bitter and sweet sound, while people are eating this bitter, sweet food, we can bring out the sweetness by 5 to 10% by digital seasoning. Simple as that. But this is not so intuitive, this is the next stage forward. And we've taken the technology from the chef's hands to all of our hands, to all of our pockets, and show just what can be done.
War gefüllt mit Informationen, Wahnsinn. Ich fand die Ansätze enorm spannend und vor allem auch zu sehen, dass es weltweit Köche gibt, die sich angefangen haben, mit sei es Künstlern oder Instituten zusammenzuschließen, um zu forschen, was passiert, wenn jemand isst, wenn jemand genießt. Von dem her eine sehr spannende Erfahrung, diese Informationen mal so ein bisschen gebündelt präsentiert zu bekommen und auch sehr praktisch mit den Experimenten, mit den Tastings und so weiter und so fort, also auf eine sehr praktische Art und Weise für Wissen vermittelt zu bekommen.
And I think you made a very good point there, which is a lot of the time when you find, especially in London, people who are doing multi-sensory dining events, what you tend to find is there's a big show, lots of kind of, entertainment around you. And the food tends to be kind of, secondary. It's never really the main focus. But for us, neurogastronomy, and for me personally, I see neurogastronomy as much more about drawing people's attention and stimulating their senses as they're eating. It's not really about using gimmicks and, different kind of ways of distracting the guest from the dish. Neurogastronomy for me should really be, and multisensory flavor perception for me should really be about engaging more of the diner's senses as they're enjoying the dish. And I think that's a fundamental kind of distinction to make, because a lot of people do see the gimmicky side of sensory dining, but I don't think they take enough time to really kind of understand that it's an innate part of who we are. We use all our senses when we're dining, as Professor Spence has kind of talked to you about. And I think for us it's just looking at how we can heighten those senses, how we can make you more aware of those senses as you're dining, how we can make you more aware that smell is actually so much more important to your perception of flavor than taste. But we never really think about that. And I think when we're eating, especially in a dining environment, we never really sit there and kind of take note or be mindful, let's say, of the way the food sounds, of the way the food, the texture of it, of the smells and what impact that can have. And then what's very interesting from that is once you kind of have that understanding of those basics, then what you can do is develop upon that and say, okay, well, if this is how we stimulate the senses, how can we then augment the dishes and change the flavors and the textures and the sounds of the dish without actually altering anything on the dish? How can we affect the surroundings in a way that completely changes? So for us, we get guests who are looking for something a bit different. They're not just looking for that kind of run-of-the-mill dining experience. They're coming to have a little fun, to be educated a little, to experience something new. So there's a lot of pressure on us in a way to kind of deliver on that. So it has to be fun. It has to be sensory. And by definition, eating is sensory, but for us, we're trying to kind of turn the volume up on all your different senses and get you so much more aware of not just what you're eating, but how you relate to it, how you interact with it, maybe your hands, maybe, do we always have to use a knife, fork, spoon, maybe there are other ways that we can think of, maybe with the pincers or a tweezers or, as long as it makes sense to the dish, and I think that's absolutely fine. And yeah, educational. As I said, very, very important to us that guests leave with a sense of having understood not just the food, but having understood as well a little bit about the culture, the history, and in the case of synesthesia, the science behind the neurological phenomenon of synesthesia. So when I first heard about this, it sounds kind of intuitive. You think, do colors have tastes? Do we associate certain tastes with certain colors? And to some degree you think, well, that kind of makes sense. It could be kind of reasonable, but it's always more interesting when you kind of put it to the test. One of the main things as well that I don't want you to get confused about is we're not trying, and we never try to do this, which is sensory manipulation. So the idea isn't that we're trying to trick you in any way. We're not trying to do that at all. What we're trying to do is see what your genuine perception is of colors and flavors. So there's no tricks here, no gimmicks, just very simple. We have 4 different liquids. You have sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. A lot of people will immediately ask, why don't you have umami? Why don't you have fatty? Why don't you have all the other flavors? Well, one of the main reasons being is that sweet, sour, salty, bitter are tastes that we've all grown up with. We can all identify with. We've all built associations with. Now, if I ask you to name a color that you associate with sweet, okay, you've got a pretty good chance of kind of getting that because you've built up associations over your whole lifetime. You've built up certain kind of ideas on what colors you expect to be sweet. But if I ask you what color you expect umami to be, all of a sudden it starts to get very difficult. So then when I ask you to put the tastes in order, that one taste of umami, whatever color we assign to it, can be very confusing for people. We tried this and it didn't work very well. But once you've arranged them into, again, from left to right, salty, bitter, sour, sweet. Salty, bitter, sour, sweet. Now, what you might want to do is look at the people next to you, see if they're the same, see if they're very different. What's interesting is the order that we've come up with, white being salty, black being bitter, green being sour, and red being sweet, is based on the research from Professor Spence's cross-modal department. But of course we each have our own perceptions and our own associations that we make with this. But nonetheless, this is where we got the base kind of idea from. Now, what's really interesting about this is if I was to present you with a blue drink, what would blue taste of? What would we expect it to be? Sweet, sour, quite contrasting ideas there, that's good. Well, the interesting thing is if you ask people in England what they expect a blue drink to taste of, a lot of the time they'll say it's sweet, it's raspberry, or blueberry, or something like that. And I think a lot of the association comes from the fact that, you know, all these energy drinks like Gatorade and all this kind of stuff, a lot of the blue drinks tend to be like raspberry flavored. But when you ask people in Asia and in the Far East, when you ask them what they expect a blue drink to taste of, they'll say lemon, like lemonade. And if anyone here has ever been to TGI Fridays, it's a big kind of restaurant chain, they do something called an electric lemonade, which is blue, which is very interesting. But the point is we all have different kind of associations. Now when we run this little experiment with our dining guests, the hostess goes around with a little board and tries to quickly mark down everyone's order before they actually consume them, or consume the spheres. And you will find roughly about anywhere between 60 and 75% of people tend to get the correct order, which is very interesting. But what's more interesting is you start to find that most people, I'd say we could go up to about 90% of people, find red to be sweet, find green to be sour. And those really stand out. So it's very interesting that to some degree, we're all a little synesthetic, and we all can taste colors in a little way. So, very briefly, and by the way, my 3.5-year-old gets this right, so I have high expectations of you all. Yeah, it's proven that kids even younger can get it right, but... okay, so we have two shapes here. Which one is boba? Booba. Which shape is booba? The more rounded one. Which shape is kiki? All right. And pretty much 99% of people will do that, okay? And partially what we wanted to do is to demonstrate that in the form of a dish. We wanted to demonstrate this idea of boba and kiki. So one of the sides of the dish contains flavors like sweet potato and pomegranate molasses and a parmesan sand, and we make a fresh curd. And the other side, paprika and sage. The other side of the dish has corn, it has rhubarb, it has green apple, it has a lime dressing, and sea bass. So, what would we say in terms of, which side would we say is boba? Anyone? The sweet potato, yeah. Kiki, the more kind of sharper, more tart, more sharp, more citrusy, more fresh flavors. And that's what we associate with a word like kiki. Is we think, when we think of something like kiki, we expect it to be more fresh, more tart, more sharp, more zesty, more citrusy. And then when we taste something like boba, we expect the flavors to be more rounded, more fatty, sweeter. And so this is what we wanted to reflect in this dish to some degree. So in a way, we've realized that we can taste colors. And in another way now, what we're kind of realizing is that we can taste shapes. And then what we kind of started to realize was, when you spray something in the air, what people automatically will do is start to engage their sense of smell. And through engaging their sense of smell, your perception of flavor is arguably 80 to 90% of your perception of flavor is made up by smell, not by taste. By taste, you can taste sweet, sour, salty, bitter, umami, metallic, fatty, and a few others. But your sense of smell, you can perceive up to about 80,000 different types of smells, distinct aromas. So it makes up such a fundamental part of our perception, our enjoyment of flavor. So what we did when you're spraying this and people are smelling, inhaling this smell, when they come to eat the soup, because they've engaged that sense of smell, they get the full burst of flavor. Because they're so focused on their sense of smell, we realized that it wasn't so much the soup that was great, although the soup was pretty good, but it wasn't so much the soup that was great. What it was is the fact that we'd stimulated their sense of smell, and that through engaging their sense of smell, they got the full impact of the soup. Because we tried this on ourselves. We sat there, ate the soup normally, then we sprayed it, smelt it, and then started, and you think, oh God, yeah. Even though the actual the aroma doesn't really impact too much, or doesn't impact the flavor, take a little taste of it once you get it. It's a very plain risotto, just a little bit of parmesan and butter. It's nothing too exciting. And then what we're going to try and do is change the flavor of it. Okay? And we're going to try 2 different types of flavors and see how that works on you. And see if this is something that works for you guys. I think as you're doing it, we can start kind of giving it out. Can everyone smell? If you need... There's a little bit of a mist, but don't worry, it's... Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I can smell it here now, so it must be kind of getting around the room. Anyone have an idea on what that is? Truffle. So as we're taking that other spoon, has everyone ever noticed, and we were, myself and a few of my colleagues were in Mugaritz a few weeks ago, and we had like 22 courses. But when one of the courses got put down in front of us, 3 out of the 4 of us tilted our dish. We didn't even notice it. We didn't even notice that it was one of the people sat at the table that said, did you notice how 3 of you have all tilted your dish? No, I didn't even think about it. And I'm sure you will catch yourself doing that at times. The dish will be put in front of you and you'll tilt it. Why? Again, it comes to this idea of what Professor Spence was talking about we have certain preferences. Now, we've been working on this. We have one dish, which is called the Sight and Sound of Flavor, and one of the main features, visual striking features of the dish is that you have a langoustine that pretty much cuts through the center of the bowl with the head and everything intact. And we have come to the conclusion that the optimal angle to serve this dish in front of the guest is at a 45-degree angle. And that seems to be the angle that people find most appetizing, it would seem. So now what we're working on is this idea of seeing, right, well, if a 45-degree angle works on this dish, will it work with a whole load of other dishes? So now we're developing all these kind of dishes to see if it was just a fluke or if 45 degrees is genuinely a much more appetizing angle at which to serve our courses.
Quite a lot, quite unexpected, very refreshing to see this new way of thinking about food and the whole concept of shapes and flavors and stuff. It's quite mind-blowing when you realize you've never thought about these things. I mean, there's a lot of things we think about with mist and smoke, but this is just a whole new angle. Very inspiring. Some things are already in play. The mist is something we've been talking about doing for a long time, and we did actually a little bit at the table. There are definitely more things to come. This has been a bit of a wake-up call to get with the times and more sensors. We're already working more with activating on the table with blow torches and creating a barbecue aroma at the table and these kind of things as well. So I think, yeah, it's good. It's definitely going to make me think about all new menus coming up.
How is it to work with those guests? I mean, they pay for your studies.
I I think a lot of the guests who are coming to our experiences, there's always a balance for us when we're developing the concepts and especially the actual execution of them, because you have to be very careful that, as you said, you have guests who are coming for a dining experience. They're not there to be lab rats. They're not there to be kind of tested. But at the same time, a lot of people who are coming to these experiences are very open to the idea of exploring and understanding more about their senses, and they're looking for that educational kind of element to it. So I think rather than turning it into a classroom or a lab, we try and integrate these ideas, as you saw in some of the dishes I kind of talked about, in a way that is, number one, all of the points that we're trying to talk about are there in the dish. It's very much attracting their attention, and they get to kind of, the hostess will give them little bits of explanation that help them understand a little bit of the sensory attributes behind the dish. But a lot of the information that we have behind this kind of research is online, and they know that if they want to find out more about it, I'd say if you look at all the research that goes into the concepts that we do, probably only about 15-20% of it actually gets executed, because you can't overload people with information. Otherwise, if I tried to explain all the research that we do in 6 months in 2.5 hours, it wouldn't be a dining experience. So what you have to do is find that nice balance of giving the hostess little bits of information that she can relay to the guests. But I think the biggest challenge is trying to put all that research into the dishes, that they reflect the idea and the concept and the research that of the concept, and as well of the research that's done by the cross-modal lab.
How is this this kind of a partnership or this kind of work together? How do other chefs react on that, Jozef? Are there similarities? Are there other chefs that also would like to, or?
I think plenty of chefs, when you get talking to them about what we do, find it very interesting and fascinating. I think it takes a while a while to kind of get your head around it, and you have to do quite a bit of reading and learning to understand, to get an idea on where these ideas are coming from. But at the same time, a lot of what we're talking about here is very related to, especially when we're talking about multisensory flavor perception, or when we're talking about the science of how we relate to food, or how we as humans, our senses are engaged by food and dining. It's something that's quite intuitive as well. So it's not miles apart. It's not that hard to really start to understand. I think all the concepts that I talked about today, there was nothing that anyone here would say, I just don't understand how that works. I think because we all have a kind of fundamental understanding of how we relate to food, maybe not from a scientific perspective. I think having the scientific perspective is what allows us to then push beyond that. But I think chefs as well, to some degree, let's give them a bit of credit, I think we have an understanding of the dining experience, and have an understanding of how the visual elements work, how smell works, how sound works, whether we've pushed it to its limits, whether we've had the knowledge and resources to be able to kind of understand it enough to innovate. I don't know. But this is through working with Professor Charles Spence and his cross-modal lab. I guess it's equipped us with the right tools to kind of have an understanding of how we can then further the way in which we express these ideas in the dishes and heighten the diner's experience of the dish. But I think any chef that you would speak to wouldn't be totally perplexed by these ideas, and I don't think there's any chef who would say, you might have people who say, I don't believe in it, or that, sure, I get it, but it's not for me. But I think, especially in this day and age, you have a lot more chefs who are very interested in getting to learn about this stuff. And I think that's partially because you've got such great chefs in the world that have worked with both these gentlemen here in developing things like El Somni, and in developing the dishes at the Fat Duck, and in developing dishes at El Bulli. And I think a lot of chefs of my generation and younger and older are inspired by this, and it kind of sets you out there to find out more about it.
Could this be maybe a new way of this creativity for younger chefs that you told this morning?
I think so, because we have a change in younger chefs. That's a good change or the bad change. I start with the bad change. The bad change is they have to look that they learn cooking properly, because they have such a lot of strange ideas, and such a lot of information from other creative cooks. They start, they're running from one creative cook to the other. They should start with a classical cook, for example, and they should start with the best They should start with the best classical cooks. They have a little bit the problem of doing the things on the upper side, but without any real good foundation. That tastes good for a year or two, and after that they will be turned down. That's quite sure, and they will lose stars and things like that. In Germany, I had to write some articles about some of these one-star cooks who just got their first star, and I said, oh, Michelin should prove that they do have the right criteria for these cooks. This is not good because, and I explained it. After that, they are open-minded enough to play around with things. But at the moment, I make the experience that you have to become something like a cook with a Michelin star, wait 5 or 6 or 7 years, and after that, which means 35 years around, you're getting in a new state of creativity, which makes you able to come up with some real good new ideas. Not before. As I told you, I told it in German, the juvenile creativity is not existing for me in cooking yet. I don't know why. This morning I took the example of the rock musicians who are 18 or 20 doing their first album and performing in a perfect way, creative and good with lots of emotion, but they can't come up with a second album because they are too educated after that. We don't have a platform. I don't know if it's possible in the art of cooking, but where is the platform where a very young cook could experiment and publish some ideas which are completely new, which are coming out of a juvenile creativity, like in rock music, for example. We don't have a platform for this, except perhaps some of the great chefs says one day to one of his very, very young cooks, do what you want.